Kate, can I kick off with you? Yes. Why are we here? Why are we discussing this? What are the benefits to musicians in being able to tour the EU? Why do you want to do it?
I have a lot to say about this.
Okay, good.
On a personal front and professional. So I think personally, being able to tour in other countries has helped me develop my skills as a performer. I think performing in other countries makes you a more dynamic performer. There's a cultural exchange that I think is really important. It gives me context for a wider world. I'm able to learn from others in their place of work. Also, I think that, British culture, we like to see ourselves as sort of the centre of being like at the cutting edge of music. That's never more present than at festivals like Glastonbury, and I think historically we've been celebrated around the world for like our contribution to music. And being able to tour and have opportunities to profit from tour in other countries around the world, including Europe, if we have less opportunities to do that, I think we're at risk of losing that reputation, that status, that sense of pride in our culture. And also I think it will have a knock-on effect on the UK economy. And I can tell you why I think that there's a direct link there. But the more we limit artists in this sense, the more that we limit UK culture on a global scale. I think, that I see music as a source of joy, and I like to spread joy around the world. I think there's validity to that. I've seen people grow in confidence at shows. I've seen people find communities in cities that they don't necessarily have their own community. I believe in diversity being a positive thing, and I think becoming more worldly has informed me and made me a smarter, more sensitive, more empathetic person and a better employer. I also see music as a work and as work and as a job. It is my job. I'm a working musician, and touring in Europe and growing my fan base there has in the past been profitable for me, and is less profitable for me now. It's much more difficult for me to make a profit in Europe and in the UK as a touring artist. And touring does build fan bases. So when people come to my show and see me as a live artist, whether they were already interested in my music or maybe they've come with a friend, maybe they've seen me at a festival, that grows me as a live artist, but also as a recorded artist. My recorded work is more listened to around the world, which is why I'm sort of linking, there is a direct link, and it is an ecosystem between recorded work and live work. When we go out and tour, we're promoting our recorded music. We're actually promoting UK culture. I have contributed significantly to UK culture. I think we could all agree. I've won a Brit Award. I've made the company Universal a lot of money. I still make them a lot of money to this day, even though I'm not signed to them anymore. And if I had not toured my first record made of bricks, there's no way that impact would have been as significant. I make the streaming companies money, even though my share of the profits, in my opinion, are too low and unethical. And these companies are major companies in the UK. They make a huge contribution to the UK economy. And if people around the world, including in Europe, cannot see us live, and we lose the ability to promote ourselves, those streaming numbers will go down. And I think that will have a negative impact on the UK economy. Music, I think, brings in roughly, the last figure I read was about 8 billion a year to the economy, so that's significant. And I think the ethics of recorded music is relevant to this, because we are paid so unfairly for our recorded music, and we were told for a long time that was okay because we made money from touring. Well, now it's really difficult for us to make money from touring. The last European tour that I went on, I lost, I think, 26 grand. And the last UK tour that I went on, I lost about 13 grand. 6 days before the tour in Europe, I had to let go of a crew member. It was around Christmas. I felt terrible about this. But I was doing everything I could to cut costs, which I also really dislike as an employer, because I don't want to do anything to sacrifice the integrity of my show. I think, having been an artist for 20 years, having the success that I do, the fan base that I do, selling thousands of tickets, having millions of streams, I'm within my rights to protect that integrity. And just to make it really simple, I wish I could fly across the stage like a Beyonce or something, but I can't. If I had the budget, I would. But to me, the integrity of my show comes down to having 3 band members, a drummer, bassist, guitarist, a sound engineer, a lighting engineer, a tour manager, a guitar tech, who's someone who'll be on stage in case anything goes wrong during the show. I think that's pretty integral. Sometimes a photographer, and that's it. And that causes extreme losses on the road in 2025, which is like when I was last touring. I think that music should not be exclusive. I think it's for all. And it does become an issue of class. Becomes an issue of race, gender, sexuality and identity, because the doors are fast closing on who can choose to take such a financial risk. That's really real. If a younger, newer artist doesn't already have disposable income, I really don't understand how they would be able to do shows in the UK, let alone shows in Europe. I think there's a pipeline that we're not really thinking through about the future of UK music, about how we're actually seen culturally around the world. And I think that going to tour in Europe, to have cultural exchange, to develop our talent, our skill. I would not be the artist that I am today had I not done 20 years of touring. And, now the only reason it's possible for me to keep doing that, even though I have Made of Bricks in my catalogue, is I sell pictures of my bum on the internet. I started an OnlyFans account during my last touring cycle to get some attention on the issue, which it did. I was in every newspaper in the country, because I think I myself and a lot of artists are quite sick of screaming into the void about how difficult it is. So I'm so grateful to be here and to be included in this conversation, because I'm really, really passionate about what I do. And I think music is really important. I'm sure you do as well. I think most people do. And I think that anything that we can do to make it easier to put on shows in Europe will make a significant difference. And I hope that I can help explain what's behind that on this entire broken ecosystem, and why Brexit has also made some things more difficult. And if we could, find some solutions, that would really be helpful, because it's extremely difficult right now for artists. I think, Crew obviously are working with multiple artists. So I'm promoting my album, but my touring cycle is only so long and doesn't necessarily take up the whole year and isn't a full year's income for a crew member. Mm-hmm. So they might be working with other artists as well and going on multiple tours throughout the year. So then that can affect who I'm able to employ in terms of, are they actually able to do dates in Europe because of how many they've already done with other artists, not because they're not available. And I was going to add to what you were saying about the Robbie Williams tour, because it's not just difficult for the crew, that then is difficult for the entire show, because when you change out crew, it's like such a disruption to the tour, and people have to learn how the tour is working, and they might not be familiar with the equipment or how the band play or how the artist works or what's required on stage. So all of these delays can add stress and make people more tired, less sort of confident in their work. They're kind of overstretching themselves, doing jobs that aren't necessarily theirs. I've had to have new crew members in before, and my guitarist is teaching them things that actually it's not really their job to do, and then all of the additional time can actually add up to more finance for me that might not have been budgeted in, because if you need extra days rehearsal to get crew used to working with the new band, if there are problems you have to work them out, that's costly, and rehearsal rooms have doubled in price. So I can actually, when I played Glastonbury, I did a rehearsal and I'd already spent my fee before I got to the site.
As a British artist and someone who has proudly, and thank you for your opening, it was absolutely brilliant and inspirational. And, you're proudly going out and promoting our culture. But if you were in a situation where you had a huge European tour that was looking to last 6 months, would you look to employ musicians and crew that had EU passports to get over this hurdle? What would you do? What predicament would you find yourself in?
I really, I've played with my musicians for 12 years, and I think that is quite rare as a solo artist. You see it less and less now because people are, just saying it's just not affordable. There has been times where, I could have cut my band. I could just go with backing tracks, but I've really built something I believe in, and we put on a really amazing show. And I think, I looked at artists like Elton John, and when I have seen him live and the relationship he has with his musicians on stage is so amazing and beautiful. And I think that's what I believe in, is there's something really special about playing music with people for a long period of time. It's hard to go into with that sort of talking about magic and telepathy, but there's something that years and years of playing together and years of working together, as I'm sure you have your own experiences in a completely different way, just mean that you function really, really well. So I am always trying to put that first. That's a personal choice. I'm choosing not to sacrifice that integrity, but I do understand that I could profit more, maybe not go into debt sometimes. And I'm working on a record right now that's actually exploring my Irish heritage, and I'm trying to figure out what to do, because to really play the record I'd have to double the musicians that I have on stage. There's no way I can afford to do that. There's no way I can afford to play this record as it's meant to be played at the moment. I think it makes me think about, in comparison, like merch companies, for example. It does I might not necessarily be looking for band and crew in Europe. I know some artists would, and I think that that's okay, because it might be the only way to make it work. But for example, with merch, it's cheaper for me to get merchandise companies in Europe, because I need merch to make the shows profitable. Sometimes the only profit you're making is from the merch. So being charged on that and being limited on how much merch you can bring in means it's taking business away from the UK, and artists are definitely going to be looking at companies in Europe, because otherwise they're just not going to be able to make the tour happen. And I'm making financial sacrifice, but it would be cheaper for me to hire crew and band in Europe. If I didn't care about the relationships that I have and the shows that I've built, I would just let go of them and move my business to Europe to make it easier. Yeah.
Good.
Can I add to that? Sorry.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think the music industry has shown with its actions and refusal to act, they're not going to help. There's a lot that people have been asking the industry to do to help musicians, that the major companies benefiting the most from artists and profiting the most off of our work, they don't come to the table. So just to answer your question about will the industry help, the answer is, in my opinion, no. They haven't refused to help on many issues that we've already been asking them for help with.
They should, you think?
I think they should help in lots of ways, yeah. I think that Live Nation, Spotify and the major labels are responsible for a lot of the, if not all of the other problems that are going on in the industry. I think they've been very destructive to artists and artists' lives and the future of potential young new artists even being able to have the dream of having a career in the music industry. I think they will not do it voluntarily, but we're being asked to take all of the risk, and then they're sharing in majority of the profit in quite extreme ways, in ways I think are unethical. When I talk to people in other industries about how the music industry works, they're often quite shocked. I think we need to point the floodlights at these major companies that profit from us and refuse to help.
Okay, do you think that there's more the government could do to bring that to a head and bring about a different sort of set of solutions?
I do.
What would that look like?
I mean, if we're talking specifically about Brexit, I think there's quite simple things that we've probably already even covered, with merch costs and carnets and processing times. But in terms of the wider systemic problem, I would love to get back to you with serious details of what I think could help, because I feel this is an entirely broken ecosystem. I don't know an artist that hasn't experienced sort of financial exploitation and unethical behaviour, and we don't have watchdogs, we don't have HR departments, we really don't have anyone. The people that are there to help us are usually the ones who are hurting us, to be honest. And I haven't seen anything apart from external bodies like the Music Venue Trust and the FAC, people actually trying to make a difference. None of it's coming from the major companies that are making all of the money.
Thank you, that's really helpful. I'm going to move to Jeff, please.
Yeah, I've got some questions I want to move on to, but just before we do, on that's really interesting. And you mentioned Live Nation and Spotify, which are very different parts of the industry, I suppose.
Yeah.
So who could coordinate that? Could you get the three big record companies to try and pull everybody together to give advice and support to artists?
I like I said, I don't think it would have to be forced.
Yeah.
Because they don't do that, and I don't know why they don't do that. Because why aren't they helping artists earn money and have careers and tour? Why do artists eat all of the risk? But I would love to see them become responsible and actually create an environment for artists to flourish, create opportunity, nurturing the industry, not destroying it. Could they, I don't know, could there be specific grants that they're actually contributing to? I think they should be forced to share a split of their profits with grassroots venues of independent artists, or even just paying people fairly to begin with. And they are really separate companies, and they do really separate things, but they're very much linked. They're very much linked, all of them.
Yeah.
I guess I can speak to, like if you're held up, first of all, it would be really hard to build in an extra day for additional travel on top, to put 2 travel days into a tour. If you don't need it, would add thousands, because I would be paying, if there's 10 members of crew, everybody's wages for the day, plus an additional the driver cost and the bus rental, and then or if you're in a van, hotel costs, and all of the costs for these things have actually really gone up as well. And then if you're in a van, or you might be asked to, everybody has to get up at 4 a.m. and get out of the vehicle, and things have to be searched, and then that can affect people's well-being, ability to do their job, and just sort of it does cause quite a bit of disruption. And again, like worst case scenario, you're held up so much that you miss the show. I've seen that happen to bands before. So if you're bringing in your own merch from the UK, there's a limit on how much you can bring in, which merch, as I said, can literally make or break a tour. It can stop it going into the red. It could actually enable you to profit. It's obviously something you can't quantify completely, or know exactly how much merch you're going to sell, but you can have an idea, especially if you've done a lot of touring. And the limitations on how much you can bring in from the UK mean that you're taking another financial risk. And so if you maybe can find a company in Europe that doesn't that isn't a UK company, because then you're not limited and you can get it delivered, that will mean that you can go on the tour or not.
Okay. And some artists, presumably, that plays into the idea that some artists are now just not touring the EU because of those sorts of problems, I've
heard people just say, what's the point, because it's just too... It's like, it is supposed to be our job. We love it, and it's passionate, and it's really fun and whatever, but it's also work, and it is our job, and we are supposed to earn from it.
Yeah.
I would say they're very possible if you're on a major label, and outside of that, if you're an independent artist, a lot more difficult.
So with all these things, it's the little guys who'll be hit hardest, who are being hit. Yeah.
You could be potentially the future big guys.
Yeah, that's true. You're choking off that talent stream that they would have grown.
I would add to that, it probably also really impacts support slots. So artists that get offered a support tour, or being able to bring someone on the road, because you're not the headlining act, you're not paid anywhere near as much. But it can be a great opportunity to tap into somebody else's audience, but just probably impossible to do. I would imagine going to Europe from the UK on a support slot, because I just don't know how much money you need to make that work. I've had people... I've offered support slots to people where we've had them travel with us, and that's how it can be possible, but then they're just kind of doing it completely on their own, and it would be impossible otherwise for them to do it,
The support act would be from the EU rather than getting someone... Because there are lots of examples of when people were coming for the support and they, by the end of the tour, became bigger than the main act.
Yeah, I think that...
Pixies and people like that, historically.
Like bands being able to go on the road together like that is definitely impacted, because for the support act, I just don't know how it would be possible to eat and pay for somewhere to sleep and, do what you need to do to make the show happen. I'd like to add, just from the artist's perspective, we are completely desperate at this point. I think that I can speak for most artists that they feel similarly, that there is a broken core of the music industry, so anything that can be done that makes it easier and more financially viable helps. So, improving processing times on A1 forms, like reducing carnet costs, being able to, relax the rules or increase limits regarding movement of merchandise. These are all really, really helpful things, because everything, like, we need all the help that we can get in a basically unregulated industry that is, in my opinion, exploitative. I think that music is work. I think we need to really start to see it as work. Why don't we have a Fair Wages Act? You know, why aren't we auditing and investigating these companies that practice things, I think, that are unethical in comparison to other industry standards? We're desperate as artists for any help that the government is willing to give us would be great.
Someone's taking heed, because we are doing a reset.
The government needs to put its money where its mouth is. Excellent. Let's have Vicky.
Yeah, like, the problems domestically are impacting the problems, like, in the rest of the world. So I hope I've expressed how these are really interconnected and how they have a knock-on effect on each other. So, as I was saying, like, someone from a working class background with no disposable income who couldn't support themselves financially to make a show in London happen, let alone a tour domestically, let alone shows in Europe, because, you know, they might not have 600 quid. They might not have the cost, you know, money saved to be able to pay for a carnet. I think that working class people, no disposable income, no support financially from a major, from an OnlyFans, from whatever it is, like, are not going to be able to play shows in Europe. They're not going to be able to play shows here necessarily. I hope that answers the question, the first part of the question. And then what are we going to do to make, I mean, I don't know, like, why you would want to have a career in the music industry, apart from that you love music, and I think it's the best job in the world and I love what I do, but it's impossible. I don't know how Kate Nash now would start a career when I worked in Nando's and my mum was a nurse and I have no connections and no sort of disposable, like, financial support from parents. I really don't know how I would be able to do it. I don't think that I would have been able to have the career that I have if I was starting now. And I think that anything, like I said, that we could do to make getting to Europe easier would be great, but we also need to look at domestically, and these companies, like I keep banging on about, but that are making, you know, millions out of artists and making it impossible for them to have future careers. And, like, it's gonna happen that these artists aren't going to exist. You know, I don't know what Glastonbury will look like in 20 years if we carry on like this. Don't know it's going to be that interesting. Maybe you know, there'll be more interesting worldwide acts and European acts, but I don't know what will happen to UK culture if we close the doors on making it accessible. It's so wrong. Like, I feel really emotional about it because I think it is so wrong. It is such a letdown, and they're exploiting people off of the work that they're doing, musicians, artists, and never getting involved in the conversation, never caring, never being willing to move at all on anything, not even being transparent about the deals that they've made, the majors and the streamers, pointing the finger at each other all the time, blaming. They're both responsible. They are both massively responsible, and so are Live Nation. They're making enough money to be able to financially contribute, and I think that they should be forced to financially contribute. I don't actually want them running it because I don't trust them, but I think that they should financially contribute to making an environment that, yeah, working class kids could go, oh, I can see a future here, because I tell you, they cannot see a future right now. It's just not possible. That's why I'm saying we're desperate, because I've seen those doors, like, closing. Sorry for the desperation, I just genuinely feel it.
It's really good. So you're kind of saying, like, years ago this wasn't the case, but now things have just got so much worse.
You know, I hate that when I'm asked in interviews, what's your advice to young people? I'm like, it's way worse now. Why is it worse now? It should be better. There's actually there could be so many opportunities. I mean, it really should be better. I shouldn't be feeling this, because I think that, like, if things were different, it would be amazing right now to be a young up-and-coming artist with how much could potentially be at your fingertips, and, like, the exposure, the connection with fans, the way that you're able to build things. It could be so much better. It's not that, like, oh, it's over and, you know, boo-hoo, like, there's nothing we can do. No, there are things that we can do. And people need to start taking responsibility. The people profiting need to start taking responsibility. And yeah, the government, anything that you guys can do to make it easier financially across the, you know, Europe and domestically would help. But it's not a simple solution. And it's a massive letdown to the entire country. And I do, you know, we hold ourselves as this barometer of cool and culture. It's going to be gone. It's going to go away if we don't do something. I think just to kind of agree with you guys, it's take seriously the people that are making all the money for, you know, that's the artists and the musicians. We don't earn all the money, but we make it possible for people to earn that money. And if we can profit from our work, we can actually contribute more and the ecosystem could flourish.
Thank you all for your time today. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.